Hi everyone. Next topic, we're going to talk about web access and the internet and try to clarify a few terms. First one, the World Wide Web, www. If we were to look at, let's say I'm going to draw the internet here. And in the internet we use Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, TCP/IP. In order to send these packets of information, here's a little packet, here's a little packet, here's a packet, here's a packet. We send them through so that they can travel from one location to another. Now, where did the term World Wide Web come from? These are not the same thing. The internet is used to allow World Wide Web traffic to travel across it. Again, this is the infrastructure, okay? If I can say that right. That's the infrastructure that allows us to move through using that protocol. So let's take a look. World Wide Web is really this idea of creating these pages, and the pages contain text and references to images, and we're able to take those and use hypertext transfer protocol and send them from one location to another. Okay? So if we were to look up here, here could be what we refer to as a web server, and over here a user, and the user has a browser software running on their computer, and they use hypertext transfer protocol. You click a link, it goes to here, it gets this text page, and if that text page needs any images and so forth, it gets those, it brings them back, and that browser can look at that text page and make it look nice on your screen, whether it's a phone, a PC, a tablet, a computer, a desktop, and so forth. So this process, the World Wide Web, uses the internet in order to move this information through. And all of this information created is pretty much open source. All this. TCP/IP, the whole thing that operates the internet, the people who thought of that, they didn't get paid for any of it, really. They just thought of it. It's a great idea. Okay? Now, let's take a look here at the next term. Service providers, service providers allow us to use their services, their fiber optic lines and so forth, to send the information through this network. Now, the real place this started was back in the late 1800s. Now, you heard that right, late 1800s, early 1900s. People started creating phone networks, and they were small local networks. And they had some terms for them. You know, like down in Texas, there was a farmer. He ran the wires along his fence and connected their neighbors, and then pretty soon these neighbors connected. Well, in the early 1900s, pretty soon all of this was blocked together. And in order to make it work across the whole country, they created a monopoly. AT&T. And I believe that stayed a monopoly until 1984. Something like that. Anyway, it was later 1900s. I think the monopoly was just approximately 70 years. And now it's split up, and so now all of these networks now are places like Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and so forth. They own this. They're the service providers. And when AT&T broke up, then we started getting things like CLTel, Clear Lake Telephone. We have all these other small phone companies now. So we went from the small ones to this big one, now back to the small ones, but they all hook into service providers. It's the people who own the connections that do this across the whole country. Browsers interpret web pages. Get a web page from a server to your browser. The browser interprets this information and makes it look nice on your screen. Okay. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we'll just talk about them. All right. Here we go. Email. Electronic mail. Most of us have used email. You can send email to a particular person. Okay. Email uses the internet. So if I was to draw, let's say, the internet right here. So if this user here sends an email and they're using the college email, they send it from home, it goes here, it goes to NIACC, and it goes on to, we already talked about storage, it goes on to storage, and then here's Mr. Dirksen. I'm sitting at home. I go into the NIACC email. This student sent me an email. I go into the email and I bring it to my house. Okay? Email is often sent through browsers, but it doesn't have to be. You can have what they call a client like Outlook, and there's other different clients. You have a client on your phone for email and so forth. So email uses the internet. It uses it to transport, but it's separate from the World Wide Web. We can use the internet to video conference and Skype and Google Hangouts and so forth. We can send instant messages through the internet. We can do chat through the internet, through all kinds of different ways of just chatting and visiting with people. Social networking, Facebook, MySpace, Google Plus, and so forth. Here's one now. Texting goes through your phone, the phone system. So you don't even need the internet at all to text. You don't need data access to the internet to text. This goes through the same place as your phone calls go through. So that's separate. Tweeting through the internet, blogs, weblog is they call it blogging. You can type this information out. You can start a blog, and your blog can be stored somewhere and then made available to hundreds or thousands of people out on the internet. Wikis, like Wikipedia, they're designed to sit on, let's say, out here is Wikipedia, connected into the internet. They store all this information and they allow people from all over to come in and edit and change it. Okay? And so, you could start your own wiki on whatever you want. Okay? Wikipedia is probably the most popular one. And then podcasts. Podcasts have become extremely popular. They're audio. You can, a podcast can be, they create them, they can sit here, and then you can take that podcast and as a user, you can stream it and listen to it, or a lot of podcasts can download on, let's just use iTunes as an example. And you can set it up in iTunes, so when you go to iTunes, you can take all those podcasts and put them on your device. And your device now, remember devices, it could be your phone, if you still use, I still use an iPod, could be your laptop, and so forth. They're typically audio. Some people will also, I call them podcasts, but they're video podcasts. They're a podcast. And so like this is really what you're listening to is a video, but sometimes they're called video podcasts. Next thing. Search tools. Search engines. This is a very good video. It's a little bit old, but still accurate on how search works. And this one happens to be Google. Okay? But there are lots of different search engines. Search engines, they do not hold data. Typically, data that's being searched for. Okay? What they hold are indexes to the data, if that's a way to think about it. There are there are these crawlers that look at the internet and gather information from all these websites. And then they bring them back to these locations, whether it's Bing, Yahoo, Google. They store all that information, and then you search it to find the term you want, and then they tell you which web pages that information's on. The video is good. Listen to that, and it'll give you a good explanation of that. And there are a variety of search engines. This is really important. Content evaluation. What you read online. It could be opinion, it could be fact, it could be accumulations of facts, it could be accumulations of what people perceive. Wikipedia. Wikipedia is millions of people voicing their ideas. So it's what the majority thinks, not necessarily what might be a fact. So you gotta be careful what you read online. Okay? And how you perceive it. You must evaluate the content. You must decide if the content is of value. Plus, you must look at the source of where the information comes from. Okay? Appreciate your patience. Here we go. So, first thing I mentioned, the internet. And we talk more specifically later on. We're still kind of general, but let's just say this is the internet. That is just the infrastructure. That moves packets through using some particular protocol. What it allows us to do is to connect together different locations. Okay? And so let's just use Google as an example. Google has a data centers and it's hooked into the internet with probably a big pipe. What I mean by that is this would be a lot of bits per second. And their data centers are connected in with multiple connections. It wouldn't be just one. Okay? So, for example, Gmail. If I send, let's say this is home for me or you or whatever, and you have a little network at home and you have that connected in the internet, and your pipe is much smaller than maybe some of these other ones. I generate an email and I send it and I generate it through Google and I send it to my wife. My wife uses Yahoo. Okay? So it goes to Yahoo and it's stored there. When my wife wants to read it, she will come into Yahoo and get the mail off and bring it back to her computer. The internet just becomes the path in which we send it. The internet is made up of service providers. And those, the tier 1, which you learn about later on, the main service providers all communicate with each other to help the internet work. So if you're contacting something using the internet specifically, then this connection here is made by an internet service provider. Last thing I'll mention, the internet doesn't actually store our data. It just allows us to move the data. Okay? So Google has all this information stored about everything on the internet. Just about everything. Not everything. Okay? Then when we want part of this, okay, let's say we're here at NIACC. And so we use our search engine. It goes through, finds, we pick the link we want the most. And let's say it's some information at Yahoo. Then we go to Yahoo, get the information, and it comes back. And what looks at that information? What moves through the internet from, let's say this is Yahoo's World Wide Web and Yahoo's web server. We get a web page. It's formatted, later on you'll learn, HTML. So get this text page that comes to our browser, right? Let me use another word here. The browser looks at that text page and makes it look nice on our screen, whatever device we're using. If there were images, they would then come too. And then in that browser, if there's that screen, if there's a link to go to, let's say, Google, we click it, go there, get its information, brings it back, and it draws a nice screen for us. And that's how it works. We'll cover more specifics in Unit 5 after midterm.